Hello, this is Damon with Pixnub Software. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use the Sports Magazine template that I just released. This template is different than some of the templates that you probably use from me because this one does not have graphics. It's meant to use with your own image that was shot on location. And it's meant to give that classic sports magazine look where there's a normal image without being cut out, but then you've got the magazine name going behind the player. So there's almost a pseudo composite look to that. This is really simple to use. Now you can use whatever font and whatever name you want for the magazine. The font is editable. This is just a fictitious name I put in for the video, of course, but you can use whatever you want. When you download the design, it's going to look just like this. And so there's no graphics in there to begin with because, like I mentioned, you're using your own on-location image, and those images are not supposed to be cut out for this design. However, you notice that the magazine name is above the player layer, and that is because there's an action that it includes that you run that will put this behind the player, and I'll go over that in a minute here. But this is a sports photo automation SPA ready template, and this uses player mode 8. And what mode 8 will do is it will fit the image to the canvas, but it will fill to take up the entire canvas space, and if the aspect ratio doesn't match, you might have to move or scale. So it's best if you're doing these in automation to crop your images to the proper aspect ratio and get them cropped in just as you want so it'll fit perfectly. But I'm going to show you here that if you're just doing manually, you don't have to do that. You can do that as you're building as well. So you can run these through the SPA batch, of course, or you can add the player manually if you want, just put an image in there. But if you want to do these through the Sports Photo Automation setup, you can also go into the Sports Photo Automation panel and go to Setup PSD Template, and here you can use this to just add images, and that will auto fit them by using the Add Custom Player Image button. So let's put the image in here, but as mentioned, mode 8 will fill the entire canvas, and if you see if I go left and right, it's fit that exactly to the width. However, since the aspect ratio is different, there's extra pixels above and below, so I'll have to decide where I want that, and then I could even scale that too. So like I say, if you're going to run these in batch, it may be best to batch crop everything exactly where you want them, like in Lightroom or whatever, with all your images, and then you can run those in batch in SPA, and it will put those exactly in the template as you've cropped. Because if the aspect ratio of your images matches the template, it'll just fit it perfectly. But since I didn't do that for this, I'm showing you how you would handle it if you were doing one image at a time. Okay, so now you notice that the font is in front of the player. So two things with the font. First, I'm going to show you how you would edit the font, and then I'll show you how to get it behind the player. So if you wanted to make this the name of your favorite magazine, you would go into, here's your two layers for your sports and your magazine. Now, I am not going to officially condone the use of a copyrighted magazine name. So if you do that, that is completely up to you. And whether you have permission to do that or not, that's really none of my business. But for the sake of this video, this is what I'm going to put in. Now you notice that this is a capital I and these are small L's, and I think the graphics designer for this font use the exact same vector dimensions for capital I and small l. So what you can do is 82 points is the size. If you're using the 8x10, if you're using the 16x20, it'll be twice that. But for the 8x10 here, because this comes with an 8x10 and a 16x20, but for the 8x10, this is set to 82 points. If you just highlight just the capital I, make that 92. That seems to be the value that matches pretty well. And press enter. So now you've changed the font size of just that. So this is a little bit larger. So the capital I is a little bit larger than the small l's. You could, if you wanted to get fancy, create two different text layers, one for just the I and the one for the rest of it. And then you could scale just the X to make that width match. So the height is taller and the width to match. If you want to get that picky, that's completely up to you. But anyway, I think this actually looks good enough. All right, so now to get this font behind the player. Now this is something that can be done in batch as well, and I'll show you how to do that. But first we need to load the actions in that puts this font behind the player. So you have to have your actions window shown, which you go to Window and Actions. It's going to pull up this. I've already got this loaded, but I'm going to delete that so I can show you how to load these. So if you hit the little drop down here and hit Load Actions, and then the download comes with actions here. All right, so now that you've got the actions loaded, you'll see there's a bunch of actions in here, and the majority of these are to set color, but the top one here that says Add Text Mask, if you just play that action, it's going to place the text behind the player. So it's not actually cutting the player out. It's applying a layer mask. It's basically an inverse of the select subject of the player layer. And so if you look at the mask here, it's applying this mask, but it's doing it to the top layer group. And this layer group contains all of this font and graphics on that layer group above. So you don't have to worry about the select subject being perfect in most cases, especially around the feet. It really doesn't matter because the only part of that mask that's really doing anything is the part where the player goes directly in front of the text. Anything else below this mask, for example, if it, let's really mess this mask up here. So if this mask is all just jacked up down here and didn't do its thing right, because a lot of times around the feet area it doesn't work right, but let's just say it was completely messed up. You notice that that doesn't matter at all because the only part of the mask that's doing anything is this part right up here. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is if you decide to rescale your layer after you put the mask in, which I'll demonstrate here. Now you can see that that mask no longer lines up because what you're doing is you're basically erasing the text in that area to make it appear that it is behind the player. So let me scale this to get this back on the canvas again. But say you did rescale it just a little bit here, and that no longer lines up. You'll have to rerun the action to reapply that. Now, if you do that though, let me just demonstrate if I rerun it again, because it's going to throw an error. Okay, so there's nothing broken with the action. It's just that it's already got a mask here. It says the command make is not currently available. That's because this action is telling it to make a mask, but there's already a mask on that layer. Actions are not smart enough to know if it's being told to do something. It's just repeating steps, but it can't do that step. It's just going to throw an error. So what you need to do is you need to first throw that mask away if you're going to rerun your action. Now if I rerun the action here, it's now going to work properly. Now you don't have to worry about this if you're running SPA in automation. Just make sure you don't save the template with a mask there, because when SPA is running, each time it runs a new image, it's going to revert back to the template as opened. So it'll run flawlessly when you run that action with your SPA batch. So no need to worry on that. I'm going to now throw in another image here. Oh, before I do that, actually, I want to discuss the rest of these actions, because you can see this came in with the red and blue colors. There are a bunch of actions here, and these are just ways for you to easily set the color in your template. And these will run in SPA too, so you can run these with a CSV in SPA to set up the colors per player if you want. But these top actions, these will set the colors for the entire template. So if I hit the red and just hit play, it'll make all these color elements red. Oops, okay. I selected the wrong one, but that was going to be what I was going to discuss next. There's individual actions for individual elements. So this says set title color. This is the magazine title. So I can set just that element to blue. Or let's set the stars to orange. So you can customize and mix and match all the colors as you see fit. Or you can use these top actions that set all colors to set the entire template to one color. And I've included some custom examples. For example, USA, which is the default that it comes with, sets blue and red there. Or you can do, for instance, Seminoles, like for Florida State, or Hurricanes for University of Miami. These were just a couple examples I came up with. But just to mix and match colors to match the dual color theme of your team. Or you could even do 3 or 4 colors if you want. You could use a different color for each one of these elements. And so all these actions do, and these are really meant to record your own because there's too many color combinations for me to record every possible one. And I've got a whole section for how to create these already, so I'm not going to repeat all the steps. But basically when you record the action, you play each of the 4 actions for the different colors you want while you're recording, one at a time, and it's going to record those into your action. So they're very simple to create. Like I say, there's a whole section on dynamic templates. Be sure to watch that where I go over. There's a couple hours of video on me showing you how to set these up, but they're pretty simple. And you can also create your own colors too, because even though these comes with 8 different colors, you can individually go in here. For example, let's go to the where's it at? The sports magazine, for example. You could go in and make this whatever crazy color you want. You could, of course, do that manually, but you could also record your own action to do that. That way you have an easy action to play to get that same color back or to use with SPA during its processing. Okay, so let's set that all back to red. Now, as far as SPA goes, I put in the yellow color coding here for what layers were SPA layers. So this layer is your first name, and this layer is your last name. And I called this down here team name. That way it's got an SPA name. I figured those were the 3 that you would probably be changing in SPA if you needed to change any layers. You could make some of these other SPA layers too, but they're not, because I assume that this longer text here plus the magazine name plus the paragraph text, you can't even really do an SPA. So actually you might be able to. Take that back. I don't know if I restricted it to not allow it or not. I can't remember on that. I know that you're supposed to use point text, but if you have a paragraph and put a long string in, I'm not 100% sure what will happen, quite honestly. But in any case, those are the three that I designated as SPA layers. Now, if you're going to run this in batch, let me show you here. I might have to close these. No, it's not. It won't make me close them, I guess, unless I hit run. So when you run this in batch, in order to get this action to run, so where it will put the text behind the player, you'll have to run post action on composite. And after you load in the action, if you have not restarted Photoshop, actually you have to hit this Reset Actions drop down, and that'll get this actions into your drop down. Because if you don't see them there, it's because you haven't reset yet to load those in. But you'll just select that action to add text mask. Then when you hit run, this action will run at the very end after it's built the composite, before it flattens anything, so it'll get that text behind the player for each image in batch. Now, one more thing that I'm thinking about here, I probably should have shown this earlier, but if you, I'm just going to demonstrate before I talk about it here. All right, so I'm going to add in a different player image. All right, now I gotta find. Okay, I think this was the one that has the issue. It's not really an issue, it's just kind of how Photoshop is right now. So let me just explain here. To get that text behind the player, it's relying on select subject. So with that in mind, it is only going to do as good as select subject itself does. And select subject is really good typically with people, but with sporting equipment, it's not always 100% perfect. And I believe this ball has a couple spots that don't work perfectly. So if I go to the add text mask action, yeah, so you can see that this ball, you can see some of the font showing through. So please don't send me any emails and tell me that this action is broken. It's not that the action is broken, it's just that it is limited by how well the select subject tool in Photoshop works, and select subject does not see sports equipment that well. And so if you're holding sports equipment up in this top area where you need that mask to be good, you'll sometimes have to touch the mask up. So in this mask, if you just select this mask and grab a black brush here, let's see, we'll go. No, I don't know. No, I must have hit selected mask on accident. I don't know how I did that. But in any case, if you grab a brush here and you just paint black. Oh, I somehow got it switched to white. Let me undo that. Okay. Now we're painting black in the mask. I'm not going to be too particular with this, but it doesn't usually have to be perfect on this either. But you can see that we've corrected that And if you're doing these in batch, and this is something too, when you're shooting, I know a lot of people don't plan ahead for potential problem analysis to where they're thinking, okay, what could be some problems that could cause me more work down the road? So if you don't want to have to touch these up and you're planning to do a template like this, then you may choose poses where they're holding a ball lower, so that way you don't have to worry about the touch-ups. Because like I said, the only time you'll really run into issues with this is if there's sporting equipment that's in this top area that is going over the magazine cover name. But if, and like I mentioned before, oops, I didn't mean to do that. To go into the mask. This mask itself, as mentioned, can be completely messed up anywhere else, and you're not going to notice because it's only the areas where this font is that you have to worry about this mask being perfect. So if they're holding the ball lower and that's completely erased, it's not going to make any difference. I hope that makes sense. So it's really up to you whether you want to spend the extra few seconds to touch up or not. And so for me, if it was something that I was customizing one at a time, it's no big deal to touch that up. But if you want to walk away in a batch, then you may stay away from having the poses with them holding the ball. And so, honestly, for me, I would keep the pose like it is here if I was doing just a few teams and just manually touch it up. But that's up to you, whether you want complete automation or you want to have to touch things up. Now, if you do want to batch and you have poses where you know there's sporting equipment above there that might cause issues, what you can also do is in your batch processor, you can just click on the pause on finished image. And so when it runs, it's going to build it. It's going to run the action first. Make sure that this pause before action is not checked. If this is checked, it'll pause before this action runs. But as long as this is unchecked, it'll run this action first and then it will pause. And then you can touch up each image as you're going in the batch. And as soon as you hit continue, the batch will just continue on. So if you want to do a batch automation, but kind of babysit it and make sure all of your masks work out perfectly, that's completely fine too. But yeah, just know that select subject works really good with people, not so good with sports equipment or any objects outside of people for that matter. And that's just the nature of what the Photoshop AI is right now. It's getting better though, and I suspect in the future it'll be a non-issue. So anyway, I think that covers it all. And this video is probably a little bit longer than it should have been, but I hope you learned something. And really, I wanted to create something like this because I know a lot of people have asked about doing different compositing without extracting and using their own backgrounds. And so I wanted to create something like this as a way to get that ball rolling for future designs that I have coming out, because there's actually a lot that can be done with what I'm going to dub as extraction list designs. And that is where you're not cutting your image out. Now, this is a very basic and classic example, but there's a lot more exotic and extreme applications you can do as well with extraction list, where there's more graphics incorporation. I'm not going to get into too many details there, but I am going to be periodically releasing some of these. And I'm hoping to get a little more complex with each one to kind of ease people into this idea, because I think this is a concept that could be huge for people who don't want to deal with extractions, just as another option, of course, in the workflow. So anyway, thanks for watching, and be sure to pick up this template. This is currently a platinum member template. I may release this on the main website too soon as well. Thanks for watching.